Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call a meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good to see everybody's here tonight. Old business, item number 1 is approval of minutes. The regular meeting minutes of May 18, 2023 were provided for review. So I need a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of May 18, 2023 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Call roll.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Mr. Bueller?
Yes.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Mr. Brungard?
Yes.
Mr. Studnicka?
Yes.
Mr. Gardner?
Yes.
Motion passed. Audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda? Rob, please come up, state your name and address, and give us what you got.
Okay, good evening. Rob Gaslin, Cottonwood Drive here in Lansing, and with the Fire District Number 1 Board of Trustees. Want to talk just for a few minutes about manning the force, or said differently, how the heck are we going to get people to fill all the jobs that we have to have filled in order to accomplish our firefighting mission. So a long time ago, a very long time ago, I did a little bit of volunteer firefighting in a city up north, about 82,000 people, pretty good sized city for the time. And at that time, we had about 120 firefighters for that city, all volunteers. Big cultural thing. We all either lived and worked or went to school in that town. We all went to the same picnics or barbecues together, played softball together, all of those cultural kinds of things, and then rolled out to the fires all together. And jump forward to the early 2000s, that number peaked. This is long after my time there, obviously. That number peaked at about 155 volunteer firefighters for 8 stations for that pretty good-sized town. But jump forward to today, and they are now below 100, and that includes several handfuls of full-timers that have been added to replace volunteers. And you can see that about 1/3 of their required manning just isn't present anymore. And that is pretty typical of what's happening across the country with respect to volunteers. And if you think that it's only volunteers, well, it's also affecting the hiring and the retention of full-time employees as well. So something that I think you need to be aware of. It's certainly a problem for Fire District Number 1, as it is for virtually every firefighting organization in the United States. So in 2020, which is the last time data were available, about 65% of the nation's firefighters were volunteers. That equates to about 677,000 firefighters. And that number had been, since around 2000, that number had been trending downward at about 6% per year. So pretty steep decline, and pretty easy math to see that the model for volunteer firefighting in the U.S. is collapsing. Since 2020, the data are not in yet, but the evidence suggests that the 6% decline per year is probably going to be the good old days. The numbers are dropping even more precipitously. So a fire chief in an adjacent city to the one where I grew up in recently lamented that he used to be able to put out hiring actions for even one job, and he would get 30, 40 applicants for that one particular vacant position. He says nowadays, if he puts out an announcement for multiple positions, he's lucky if he gets 8 or 9 people total, and of that, typically half of them are either underqualified or unqualified for the position. And that's happening, again, at every fire district, every fire department, virtually throughout the country, whether it's in the urban core or rural. And those fire departments are competing with each other as they try to replace volunteers with full-timers. They're competing with each other for the same potential labor pool, which is declining. And why is it declining? A lot of reasons. There are big demographic issues, an aging population, for instance. There are generational differences, and these are gross simplifications, but they're not mine, they're the researchers. The baby boomers are retiring, Gen X opting for jobs that suit family life, millennials opting for higher pay or better work-life balance than what public safety jobs will allow, and Generation Z, to the degree that we have data, are eyeing the high-tech industries instead of public service. Now, there are other factors, too, that enter in, degrading, defunding nominally the police, but that has spilled over to all emergency services, budget pressures, even more esoteric things like generational loss of tool knowledge, hand tools, knowledge and experience, and even a reduction in generational grip strength. So lots of reasons why firefighting is becoming a hard-to-fill commodity, but those are some of those. So the operational models of the 50s, which is the time period that it's not when I volunteered, but I was in that particular model, is collapsing, and a failure to adapt to that collapse, to that change, means we've got an increased risk of property damage, increased risk of injury or even death to firefighting personnel, and we have an increased risk of liability to government. So all things to worry about. Like I said, it's affecting full-timers as well, and there's some additional factors besides some of the ones that I just listed. We have access to a lot of data at the national level that tells us what's going on. We have our own experience at Fire District Number 1, which tells us what kinds of things are happening locally. And in order to bridge that gap, one thing that we've done, our knowledge gap, is to send one of our trustees with a portfolio of governance, that would be Greg Fontenot, one of your representatives, appointed representatives, out to fire departments and fire districts locally, in the area, and regionally to kind of validate what it is that we're seeing, national data and our own local observations. And everything's lining up pretty well. Our data, we don't have enough numbers to run any statistical analysis on it, but what's happening in Fire District Number 1 is representative of every other trend that we're seeing nationally. So when we do exit interviews for firefighters who are leaving for other than some cloud over their head, and we ask them, why are you leaving? They'll tell us several things. Often more pay is part of it, and we expect that. We have a fairly small fire department in not the biggest, most expensive part of the state. We're certainly not Johnson County, but that's part of our model. We expect attrition, and we're going to fill that those vacant positions, train, and the cycle repeats. We expect that. But we also hear other things that are a little bit more worrisome and might be of interest to you. We do not hear people say, oh, Lansing evil. That was silliness that was generated in the past by outsiders from the district. We're not hearing that it's the turbulence as a result of Lansing. We're not hearing that kind of thing, and that's good. But we are hearing that they're concerned of the possibility of a future where there's a smaller department, and they tell us that they want experiences with more runs, bigger apparatus, a larger pool of people so that there's less burnout with overtime. And so those are the kinds of things that we hear, and we take that under our hat, and we try to work with that as best we can. We wish them the best in their new endeavors, and then we proceed to try to hire to fill the vacancy. But again, our experience is being replicated at fire departments and fire districts throughout the area, throughout the state, and nationally. One of the things that fire departments and fire districts do in order to mitigate the problems of fewer people are economy of force measures. It's a military term, but one that applies to us. Another time I'll talk about some of those in a little bit more detail, but examples would include mutual aid and auto aid, overtime. Got to be careful with overtime because you can burn out people and blow a budget. Doing hybrid between full-time, part-time, and volunteers, but all of a sudden that's become a problem because the state has labor laws now that say you can't have a part-timer also being a volunteer in the same organization, getting paid and volunteer in the same organizational setting. So we no longer can have part-timers who are also volunteers. And so lots of economy of force measures that help us mitigate the issues with fewer people. So I mentioned up north where I'm from, turning the other direction on Interstate 35 down to Turley, Oklahoma, be through soon, and that's a suburb of Tulsa, and the fire chief there talks about all of the economy of force measures that he uses. Some of them I've listed, but he's worried because he says he'll get two apparatus show up at a fire, one of them with 2 people and another one with 2 people or maybe even 1 person, both of them undermanned. When he arrives at the scene, he can put a crew together, or he can take a chief and assign it to one of those particular apparatus and make a full crew, but then he no longer has a chief that's engaged in situational awareness and incident command. And so there are risks to everything he does. And then, oh, by the way, he says, what happens when I've done all these economy of force measures and I'm able to deal with this particular structural fire, and all of a sudden I get 2 grass fires and 2 more structural fires at the same time? How do I deal with that? So those are risks that he has to deal with and that we're dealing with as well. So a bottom line is, for us, as we see it, is that size matters. The smaller you get, the harder it is to absorb FMLA, family medical leave, people who are out for injury under workman's comp, normal losses and leaves and so on. And the smaller you get, the harder it is to absorb that. And we are working through that. We don't have all the answers, but we are working through that. Hopefully you've been talking about this as you've discussed and voted on fire department possibilities for the future. I'll just conclude with saying that some of the things that I talked about, they're not really at the law of physics level just yet, but the currents are really strong in this area, probably at the riptide level. So I do want you to be aware of the challenges we have at Fire District Number 1 with manning the force, and it's not just our problem, it's not just volunteers, but it's full-time employees as well, and it's affecting every single fire department, fire district in the United States. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Hey, can we ask a question?
Sure.
Hey, Rob, real quick. You mentioned the volunteers, right? And I understand that. I mean, it's been an ongoing challenge in Lansing, Leavenworth, everything on volunteers. But you mentioned about equipment, status, reference to volunteers. They're not leaving because of masks expired, O2 tanks expired, uniforms expired.
No, not at all.
So all of that stuff is...
No, I think we are well equipped. We don't have any issues like that. Again, it's a perception that of a youngster in particular who's fairly new, maybe has worked 2-3 years with us and thinking about what's next, recognizing that, hey, I want more opportunities.
Yeah.
I want more experience with bigger toys. And,
more calls.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rob. All right, new business. Item number 2 is Fairway Estates expansion rezone. The applicant proposes to rezone 16.9 acre tract of land from A1 to R2. The applicant is proposing to develop the property as a continuation of the Fairway Estates subdivision. So I need a motion to adopt ordinance number 1096 to amend the City of Lansing zoning map for property owner as 0000 DeSoto Drive.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this one?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Josh or who?
Mike?
Mike?
Once we get to the replat and planning stage, can we make the developer use DeSoto as the primary entrance and exit? Because this 16 acres is between 3 subdivisions. And Fairway is one of the older streets in Ward 4.
I would say that I would say that the city council could put. I would say that when the plat comes before the city council has the ability to make recommendations of developers, and that certainly could probably be one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we did that, I think, with the subdivision on the ridge. I think in 2015 or 16, they had to come in off of DeSoto so they wouldn't disrupt all of the traffic over there. So we've done that before.
Now, I've had representatives from each of those areas concerned about the traffic coming in through their areas and tearing up the street.
Yeah, we can evaluate that and put that in some type of document with the developer. Yeah.
When the plat
Oh,
comes
you mean
before,
why they're building? You mean the
Right,
construction?
bringing in lumber.
Like a construction
entrance.
Through the woodland areas, there's one street that dead ends
Yeah.
into where they're going to build. And then when you come
Pebble
through
Beach.
Pebble Beach, there's a stop sign there where you can go into Fairway, or it continues where they did
Right.
the pipes and everything. They just don't want the traffic through their areas tearing up the streets.
I get it. Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, any idea, so the people that I've talked to are concerned about if he's going to butt the houses right up against that walking trail. Because we have a very nice walking trail and the trees and the wildlife there. And so do you have any idea how much of that tract of trees along that walking trail on the east side of the plot he's going to leave there, or is he going to clear it all out?
We don't have a development plan at this point. We run rezoning separately from the platting and the development plan process. I know that the trail is the city's. It is 35 to 40 foot wide. Obviously, the trail meanders through there, but it's going to be your typical, suburban development. It's going to be continuation of Fairway Estates,
Right.
and so there will be houses built near, but not
Yeah,
on top
currently
of.
there's homes right on that trail with their backyard to the trail
Right.
on Pebble Beach.
But,
I mean,
but those homes are further away where they are from the trail than if he butts them up right along this line here.
all right, that's the property line. So his development plan will show where he's going to build a house, but we don't have that picture right now. If he built a house on the very edge, yes, you're right. I mean, now you're on the path.
But at that point, we do have building setback lines and utility easements that have to be followed as well. So again, it'll be I won't say a mirror image of what is what the western line of Fairway Estates looks like right now, but it'll be remarkably similar. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And right here in this picture, you can see the property line. Is that accurate? Because there's a buffer between the property line and the trail of trees. So those trees belong to the city then, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
there are trees that belong to the city on that trail. Yes.
When it comes to that time where he starts doing the house plots and all that, I hope he does take in consideration of the nice trees and the wood lines of the current homes and the Fairway Estates as it is right now. I hope he does, versus just mowing down all the trees for empty backyards. I mean, I guarantee you whoever wants to buy houses along there is going to want trees there.
They typically do. I mean, they did in our area. They tried to save as many trees. That's their intent. I don't think they're going to tear it. They can't tear down the trees that are on each side of that path if the trees are within,
Correct.
10 feet. So you'll have trees along that path still.
I'm excited about trying to get another neighborhood in.
Yeah.
I mean, let's go. Let's giddy up.
Good luck.
Okay, anything else on this one? We'll go ahead and call a roll.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mr. Major,
Yes.
Mr. Garvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bueller,
Yes.
Mr. Clemens,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Mr. Stednica,
Yes.
Mr. Gardner,
Yes.
Motion passed. Approval of temporary special event permit, Lansing Independence Day. This year's Lansing Independence Day event will include an adult beverage truck offering beer, wine, and alcoholic beverages for sale. Embrace the Grape of Kansas City LLC will be the entity handling this. I need a motion to approve the temporary special event permit and authorizing Embrace the Grape of Kansas City LLC to sell beer, wine, and alcoholic beverages at the Lansing Independence Day event.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this one? Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call roll.
Mr. Kirby,
Yes.
Mr. Major,
Yes.
Mr. Garvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bueller,
Yes.
Mr. Clemens,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Mr. Stednica,
Yes.
Mr. Gardner,
Yes.
Motion passed. Approval of amended fee schedule. Ordinance 1095 adopts an updated fee schedule for service charges and fees for various departments. To implement the changes, a new fee schedule must be adopted by ordinance. Waste Management has increased their fees, which will increase the residential refuse collection from $17.13 to $18 a month, and the senior rate from $15.13 to $16 a month. So I need a motion to adopt the ordinance number 1095, an ordinance amending the service charges and fees for finance and for administration thereof.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this one?
What is that? I thought we had a contract with them, so I don't understand the fee increase. Somebody explain that to me?
This is an inflationary increase that they sent
Speak
us.
up, please.
It's an inflationary increase so in their contract, they're allowed, I think, one inflationary increase per contractual period. I can't remember if the contract was for 3 or 4 years, but this is the one inflationary increase they requested.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and their reasoning was fuel cost, as I recall, right? Yeah. I think we're all feeling that one. Okay, anything else? Call roll.
Mr. Kirby,
Yes.
Mr. Major,
Yes.
Mr. Garvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bueller,
Yes.
Mr. Clemens,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Mr. Stednica,
Yes.
Mr. Gardner,
Yes.
Motion passed. Item number 5 is replacing sidewalk ramps during mill and overlay change order. The 2023 mill and overlay is operating near 3 sidewalk ramp locations. The replacement of these ramps, while already mobilized, is being presented as an option for consideration. So I need a motion to accept $22,000, $950 in addition concrete sidewalk ramp work to be included in the 2023 mill and overlay project.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? For Mike.
Yeah. Mike. So I read everything that was in the packet for us. And I saw some of the pictures. Is it limited to just what we saw and what's listed there for the
No,
2,000?
There's a couple more. I think what I wanted to show with the photographs was this is more of a nice to have versus a need to have. And because the aggregate cost of all of them exceeds the budget authority of staff, I need to bring it to the city council. Some of these could, we could just replace the curb and then leave the old ramp in there, but it's kind of one of those things. We're there, we're mobilized, we've got the contractor on site. Let's replace the ramp while we're there and make the ramp, kind of match.
It's supposed to be ADA as well.
When we
Those ramps?
when we replace the ramps, we will put the truncated dome
Okay.
panel inside of the ramp.
Mike, thanks for doing this. This is smart.
I think it's a good idea. You're already there. You won't get it done any cheaper later on. Like,
Did that answer?
Okay. Any other questions for Mike? Call a roll.
Mr. Kirby,
yes.
Mr. Major,
Yes.
Mr. Garvey,
Yes.
Mr. Bueller,
Yes.
Mr. Clemens,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Mr. Stednica,
Yes.
Mr. Gardner,
Yes.
Motion passed. Reports. Any department heads? Nope. City attorney.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
All right. won't say city engineer because you're a department head too, so Tim, what do you got?
I have nothing. Nothing.
You got nothing? Yep, sorry. And we'll go around the horn. Gene,
Thanks, Rob. And that's all I have.
Marcus.
Yeah, thanks, Rob, and thanks for your report on the increase in the number of youth. You know, from this year, from last year to this
Oh,
year.
and Parks and Rec.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
Parks and Rec. Great
Yeah.
job. Great job on the Parks and Rec piece. I appreciate that. That's good stuff. Mayor, that's all I have.
All right, thanks. Jesse.
Thanks for your information, Rob. We appreciate that input. Those are some very valuable numbers. I'd like to recognize the ribbon cutting at the ball field last week. That was a really good time. Well, it's really awesome. That's the first time I've been to that ball field. They did a great job.
Yeah, it's
out
beautiful.
there. Really beautiful place. So hopefully we'll get a lot of use out of it. That's all I've got.
All right, thanks. Greg?
Again, Rob, thank you very much. Very interesting information. So last week I said I was not going to file.
We're holding you to that. Next? Yeah, just kidding. Go ahead.
However, I had multiple residents of Ward 4 approach me and ask me to reconsider, along with some other people. So I reconsidered, and I did file. So
Back in the race.
back in the race.
With your wife's approval?
With my wife's approval. And on this day in 1938, the very first issue of Action Comics featuring Superman was published. And in 2014, an original copy of that sold for $207,852 on eBay. That's all I have.
Nice. Dan?
I know y'all been keeping up with the news on the debt ceilings and stuff like that. Some of the proposals is pulling back all of the ARPA money. And I think that we need to be leveraged and have plans to use it to benefit our citizens, whether it's extending mill and overlay, sidewalk, getting the fiber past phase 1, putting in new utilities and things of that nature. Last thing I want to do is go back to the federal government and it counts half of a cent in our taxes.
Right.
If we got it, I think we need to use it for our citizens. That's everything, Mayor.
All right, thanks, Dan. Will say I'm going to have to read that a little closer because I thought they were clawing back the COVID money, vice the America Rebuilds Everything money.
Mr. Clemens and I were talking about this a little bit before the meeting, and there are some articles that do seem to indicate that, and then there's other articles that say once it's in the city's coffers, the feds can't get it. So, I mean, there's both things are out there, and Mr. Clemens could very well be right. We'll double check on that.
Yeah.
You know, a couple things to keep in mind from our perspective, though. We do have that water line potentially coming up. If we do want to do that, that would be a little bit over $300,000. And I know last year, I think they made the rules a little bit more liberal in terms of what you can use it for. So I almost wonder if we could use it for street maintenance or storm sewer projects also. And there's a couple of those we could probably tackle pretty quick. So, but that's a really good point. I agree. We don't want to lose $817,000 because of something happening in DC. So.
Sure. I'm sure word will come down on how that's going to happen. It'd be nice if they would just pass a bill. Okay. Kerry.
I have nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, Kerry, thanks. Donna?
I don't have anything, Mayor, thank you.
Yeah, Kevin?
Mr. Gaston, thank you for coming in. I did have an issue with one of the citizens, so I want to thank you and Tim and Gene for your quick response on that issue. And I had a great time at the ballpark. That's all I have. Oh, and I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Call a roll.
Mr. Kirby?
Yes.
Mr. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Garvey?
Yes.
Mr. Bueller?
Yes.
Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Mr. Brungard?
Yes.
Mr. Stednica?
Yes.
Mr. Gardner?
Yes.
We are adjourned.